Warm greetings to one and all. Title of my today's research paper is Interplay of Psycholinguistics and Vocabulary Acquisition in ESL, that is English as Second Language. It is a conceptual paper, and for the ease of presentation would be starting with the keywords of the title. Psycholinguistics. It studies how a human mind acquires, comprehends, produces and perceives any language in oral and or in written form. It is mostly concerned with the cognitive faculties and which are very important to learn grammatical aspects and other language skills, also vocabulary. Then we have vocabulary, which is a very significant indicator of both one's language learning and one's ability to learn language. And we all must have experienced that a variety and range of English teaching situations prevail here in India owing to the twin factors of teachers' proficiency in English and pupils' exposure to English outside school. Thus, there's a dire need among ESL learners to learn words in easier and faster, more enjoyable and in a self-motivated manner. And needless to say that ELT has been progressively gaining ground since Macaulay Minutes in 1935 to current NEP 2020. Thus, here in the paper, I have specifically focused on psycholinguistic aspect of vocabulary acquisition with regard to ESL. Now, psycholinguistics and language acquisition part. Mostly psycholinguistics covers three main points, that is language production, language perception and language acquisition. Language production we mean expression. By language perception we mean interpretation and understanding part. And finally the language acquisition, which refers to the processes of acquiring a native or a second language. And specifically if we talk about acquisition, it means any learning or acquiring of new language or may be the mother tongue, which should happen without effort or intuitively, like one does with their mother tongue. And this has been backed up by the MRI images and brain imaging done by neurolinguistics, who found that several parts of our brain are quite active while performing different activities related to language, which are namely the Broca area and Wernicke's area. Broca area, which is present in the frontal lobes, deal with language structures, that is sentences and words. Whereas Wernicke's area comes in the temporal region and it's more related with schema work. Later in the slide, I will display the pictorial illustration for these two particular area of our brain. Now, most of the researches which I reviewed related to this paper were giving up this classification of top-down processes and bottom-up processes. Now, to start with, these two processes are inseparable, or in other words, they can't be looked as separate entity as they go hand in hand. Top-down processes are frequently known as processes that deal with information output. Means to convey messages through words arranged in sentences and phrases as well as non-verbal cues. And they both together work for language reception and production. And here again, Wernicke and Broca, both the areas are involved in top-down processes. But the Broca area directs the necessary body parts to produce the meaning. If it is to be done orally, then the mind would direct the glottal, lung and nasal area to fill the air and exhale air to produce the desired message orally. and if it is to be done in written form, then the brain would direct the finger muscles to form the particular characters. And similarly, if the particular brain area is damaged or is not functioning properly, then we might have results of slurred speech or sloppy writing. Followed by bottom-up processes, which deals with information input, that is, through our sensory motors, whatever data we feed to our mind, that is comprehended and classified or filtered to further understand or develop our schemas or mind mapping. The top-down processes can thus be seen as means of preventing information overload, and bottom-up processes are especially important in language acquisition part. Now, next most important thing is the difference between language learning or language acquisition. Most of the times a layman might get mix up these two terms, but there's a difference between language learning and language acquisition. Language learning is where the learner takes more active part and tries very hard with practice to learn a new language, whereas language acquisition happens on its own intuitively. And as earlier also I mentioned that neurologists also mentioned about the difference between these two functions by brain imaging techniques. When the learners were monitored while doing learning or acquisition tasks, their particular brain area were highlighted or were more prominent in several activities. So finally it was found that Broca's area, which is active while the individual is performing language acquisition task, whereas the other Wernicke's area was active while analytical tasks of the language. And this is the picture, so we can have some idea about the location of Broca and Wernicke area in our brain. Up till now, whatever we discussed, on the basis of that, there are different vocabulary learning strategies followed by the language learners or the teachers, language teachers, and some of the review of studies have shown that Stauffer came up with the vocabulary learning strategies inventory, wherein he showed these 9 categories of different vocabulary learning strategies which involved authentic language use, self-motivation, organizing words depending on their word meaning, synonyms or usage, then some mental linkages. Fifth one is memory strategies evolved by learners themselves. Sixth is creative activities. Seventh, physical action, wherein the physical action would make them remember the particular words or vocabulary or language aspect. Eighth is to overcome their anxiety, and last one is auditory strategies. But the most important taxonomy related to vocabulary learning strategies which I found was Schmidt, which he presented in 1997, wherein he also took into consideration the earlier list given by Oxford in 1990, and here he classified all the 58 individual strategies into 6 main groups, namely discovery determination strategies, which involved language one, first language synonyms or bilingual or monolingual dictionary usage, social strategies, wherein the group work or classmates and teachers were consulted for first language translation or asking for word meanings. Then consolidating social strategies like practicing the learned words in a group activity, and interactive amongst themselves. Fourth one is memory strategies, wherein the different activities I have listed using pictorial illustration, images, and grouping words based on their pronunciation, storyline, semantic maps. Two important methods are pegword method and Loki method. Pegword, wherein rhyming with the numbers, rhyming words are associated with several numbers to recall them later. And in Loki method, there is a memory journey done by the learners in their brain, wherein they recall several words which they located at particular position in their brain through their mind mapping or image in the brain. Fifth one is cognitive strategies, wherein we find many teachers practicing it in their classroom, wherein they label classroom objects and things in second language. Last one is metacognitive strategies, wherein second language media and test items in the second language are used to check on their understanding and acquisition of the language. And finally, to end with, all the learning strategies, and depending on the neurologists or psycholinguistic backup, it is learned that students can take charge of their own learning and gain independence and self-direction while learning vocabulary. If only we involve more of sensory skills of children, like using more of pictorial illustration, visuals, dance, action forms, where rhymes, poems, and language games revolving around more of repetition and recapitulation, then more relatable and enjoyable references would ensure the long-lasting vocabulary acquisition. So finally, to end with my presentation, I would like to quote, "Every language is a temple in which the soul of those who speak it is enshrined." Means the learners must feel that they are part of the learning activity happening in the classroom only if they apply their own learning style to it. Thank you all.